We will begin with item 80, County Code Charter Amendment, which I held. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on this item. I believe our county counsel is available to ask if there are any questions regarding the draft ordinance that's before us. And I will begin and then turn it to my colleagues. I want to thank our county counsel for the tremendous work that they've undertaken to bring forward the ordinance for governance and ethics charter reform. We want to thank also my colleagues for our thoughtful discussion on July 9th. All of your contributions have made this process stronger, and this is the very beginning of building our governance structure to create a more representative, effective, transparent, and accountable Los Angeles County. There have been questions about this process for this proposal, and I understand what we are proposing is fundamentally different, a fundamentally different kind of process perhaps than what we might have originally envisioned. It is a going forward process, a process that starts with the vote of the people who tell us if they think it's time for change. By starting with the voters, we ensure that we don't venture down the same path as other jurisdictions, which have led to little reform and risk eroding public trust in the process. We too at the county tried to go about reform through a traditional process, calling for a consultant to do written analysis of best practices and recommendations on potential governance reforms to enable a more transparent and equitable policy development process, among other scopes of work. That was February 28th, 2023, and here we are on July 23rd, 2024, and an RFP has yet to be issued, let alone the study completed. We can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This is why instead of spending on consultants for years to come with a proposal that sits on a shelf somewhere, we are prepared to ask the voters what they think and know whether they want this change. The charter changes before us are simply the architecture for the structural change we need to better meet the needs of our diverse communities. More seats at the table for a board that reflects the diversity of Los Angeles County, distinct executive and legislative powers with an entirely new position of an elected county executive to ensure accountability for the implementation of the board's policy actions, and an independent ethics commission and common sense reforms that are essential to safeguard against corruption. The specifics of how we achieve these changes must be informed by you, the public. If approved by voters, a multi-year implementation effort will kick off, led by the Governance Reform Task Force, which will be informed by and comprised of our county workforce, members of our diverse communities throughout the county, governance experts, and academics, to name a few. This proposal reminds our communities that they hold true the power to shape a more responsive government. It shows our young people that government can work for them, and only they have the power to change it. Too much is on the line, and we don't want to lose a generation who has nearly lost all their faith in government. There are differences of opinion, and that's a healthy part of our democracy. Ultimately, we need to take governance reform to the people to embark on a process of change. Only they hold the power to answer whether they want a county government that adapts to keep up with the times or a government from 1912 when there were more cows than people. We are intentionally not predetermining what this is. This idea is uncomfortable to some people, and I understand that. And I trust the voters. It's time to put change in their hands. They hold the greatest power to reshape how the county serves our most vulnerable, serves our unincorporated communities, and delivers the services on which so many of our residents rely. Change can be uncomfortable and it can be messy, but there's no question that the time for change is now. This all-women board can continue to make history by making government work for the people even better. When people ask how women lead differently, we do so by trusting the voters, by bringing about real and lasting change. We do so by giving our power back to the people, and I ask for your aye vote on the ordinance before you today, not because this is perfect, because it is the fundamentally right thing to do. Supervisor James Hahn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, I want to start off my remarks by thanking our county council too for working so hard to turn this ordinance language around so quickly and doing such a thorough job. On top of all the work you did codifying how the board expansion would be implemented across different elections and specifying the powers of the elected county executive versus the board, you even went through and took outdated language that referred to all supervisors as him and he. We talked about this governance reform package very, very thoroughly at our meeting 2 weeks ago. But I just wanted to say how much support I've heard from people about this effort. And I'm not talking about people who work in government or are policy wonks. I'm talking about my neighbors, people who I run into at the supermarket or Starbucks, who have heard about this proposal and agree that it's time to expand the Board of Supervisors. I wasn't even sure a lot of people knew how many supervisors are on the board to begin with, but I think this idea of reforming county government has really struck a nerve. And they're recognizing that, for one thing, our districts are far too large, and they want closer, more representative government. I've heard from people who want more diverse voices on this board and hope that an expanded board will mean new districts that are more representative of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. And who knows, maybe we'll even have another man one day on the board. This is bigger than just expanding the board. It's a package that represents the most significant reforms for Los Angeles County since 1912. It includes a permanent independent ethics commission to combat corruption and restore public trust. It creates checks and balances by dividing the power between the board and a new elected county executive. It establishes a Department of Budget and Management and improves transparency around our budget process. And it lays out a plan to review the charter every 10 years and see if there are any new changes that are needed to make it even better. These are big changes for the County of Los Angeles, but they're not radical. And people I talk to are telling me that they're long overdue. I love Los Angeles County. It's an honor to go to work every day with people who are so committed to helping our residents and strengthening our communities. But I think we can make Los Angeles County even better. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Barger.
Thank you, and I too love LA County. And as someone who also talks to my neighbors, they all agree about the expansion, but the devil's in the details. And something this significant and historic shouldn't be entered with the comment of it's not perfect. We have an obligation to our voters to make sure that when we do this, we do it right, especially whether it be the size or even the scope of how this is rolled out. So I do agree. We all want what's best for our electorate. I have a question for you, Kezia, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. It is putting you on the spot, but I think we have to ask this question, and it is, the ordinance states, and I quote, such implementation costs are funded with existing county funding sources and result in no additional cost to or taxes imposed on taxpayers, with any implementation costs to be offset by cost savings as determined through the annual county budgeting process and in coordination with the county executive. I understand that these would be decisions for the newly elected county executive, but I want to ask hypothetically about the ability to offset proposed newly created elected officials and their offices through cost savings. Can you provide some clarity as to what cost savings would mean? And would it be one-time or ongoing funding, something that we always struggle with when we bring in motions, that it's ongoing? And in utilizing cost savings, would it in any way limit the ability of a department to fill unfilled vacant positions? That's a mouthful, I know, but.
All right, take this in steps. Thank you, Supervisor. So let me talk a little bit about cost savings. Cost savings is a term that we throw around a lot in the county. And usually when you hear our office talk about cost savings, we are talking about money that is left over at the end of the budget year. So you have a department, the board approves a certain amount of funding for them to use, and for a number of reasons, they don't use all the money. projects might be in between fiscal years, or they might be incomplete. So you have this leftover amount, and we call that one-time savings. There are other types of savings that are ongoing in nature, and here's an example. As part of the budget for each department, they have a budget to purchase what we call services and supplies. It's like consultants, pencils, pens, office space, etc. And there are times where their portion of that portion of their budget, it is continually and perpetually underspent. So every year they come in with a savings. And so one of the things you could do is you could take some of that savings from that underspend that we know happens every year, and you can convert that to ongoing savings, if that makes sense. Okay. And then on the issue, so there are different types of cost savings. That's the short answer. And then in terms of placing limitations on the ability to fill vacancies, depending on how much funding we would need to come up with to establish these new organizational entities. So the first thing that I would recommend is that, is there an existing function in the county already? Is there an existing unit in the county already that's performing that function? And then if that doesn't result in enough savings, then you look at what are the actual savings in the organizational units where these new functions might be handled. And then if that doesn't yield enough ongoing savings, then what you're looking at is some sort of county-wide approach. How can I find additional savings? And one of the things that we could do is we could create the savings. We could hold positions, require departments to hold positions vacant. We can sweep the positions, put them in a centralized pot until we need it. And so the answer to the question is yes. If we told departments that we need to come up with X amount of dollars and we need you to hold Y number of positions vacant, they would not be able to fill those positions because we would likely sweep them if it came to that.
Thank you. I mean, I think that it's important to understand the budget and fiscal impacts of the decisions being made, especially when I look at the language that was presented in this ordinance. Dawn, I have a question for you. SB 1439 requires that any qualifying campaign contributions either be returned or the supervisor must publicly announce the conflict and recuse him or herself from a vote. Currently, when that happens, the board's business is conducted based on the votes of the other supervisors. How will an elected county executive conduct the business of the office when they have a qualified contribution that cannot be returned or a recusal is in order?
Thank you, Supervisor, for the question. So first, I think it's important to note that under the FPPC regulation, even though our current CEO is not an elected official, regardless of whether a CEO of a county is elected or appointed, the Levine Act applies. So the Levine Act applies now to our current CEO. That's because all delegated decisions made by the CEO are decisions made by the county. Therefore, the Levine Act applies. However, if we're talking about an elected a county executive, Section 11.22 would allow the county executive to delegate any powers given to them by the charter. If the county elective has a conflict, then that county executive may have the authority to delegate the decision-making authority over to another county official, depending on the decision that's at issue. For example, when I say depending on the decision that's at issue, for example, under the charter, the county executive is prohibited from delegating powers to appoint or remove, powers to veto or approve ordinances or resolutions. Those could not be delegated.
Who would an elected delegate their authority as an elected official over to?
Well, presumably to
County council or?
No, I would assume someone within their unit, within their structural unit, like a CEO, like the CEO now. If our current CEO under the Levine Act had to recuse herself from a decision-making process, she has a whole department that she would delegate.
So if I'm conflicted on something, can I have my chief of staff, Anna, come up here and sit and vote for me?
No,
As an
not
elected,
you.
I didn't think you could.
Well, as an elected on the board, you recuse yourself and there's still a quorum of the body that can make that decision. If that decision by the body has been delegated to the county elected, then the executive and the county executive would
Who's
delegate.
elected?
Who's elected, but not a part of a body. They would delegate to someone within their structural unit. They're not voting, correct?
Yeah. And Fezia, send me an invitation to your fundraiser. I don't think you have any. So I don't think that it would, I mean, under the Levine Act, I seriously doubt that, I don't know if you would excuse yourself from anything. The answer is no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there was,
Well, you said that this current structure with CEO would fall under the Levine.
Well, yes, the Levine Act does specifically state that it applies to a chief executive officer.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether they're elected or appointed.
Thank you. In the past 2 weeks, since proposed governance reform was launched, I have had many key stakeholders, county partners, and thought leaders reach out to me to discuss this initiative and to offer thoughtful feedback and insights. There are certainly many elements of the proposed ordinance that make perfect sense and help ensure good government, such as ethics reform. As we will discuss when that item comes up today, creating an independent ethics commission and an office of ethics compliance is something that this board has the power to initiate now and to do so with a sense of urgency without needing to wait until November. However, there are other elements of this proposal that may not take into consideration the best interest of our respective local communities, key stakeholders, or our county workforce. For example, in discussing the ordinance language to utilize cost savings to play for the expanded government structure, I am concerned that it will impact vacant positions and limit a department's ability in the future to fulfill their vacancies, similar to how we've seen the City of LA handle its recent budget deficit. The motion authors are speaking of urgency and the need to push forward with reform now instead of waiting until the board approved the consultant review and assessment is completed. And I do agree with you, Chair Horvath, it did take too long, absolutely. This is something that we should have a sense of urgency to make sure we do it right and we get all the facts. Yet the substantive changes in the proposed ordinance take effect in 4 and 8 years respectively. If we are waiting 4 years, I am unclear as to why this board is now not doing its due diligence to complete the consultant report that we unanimously as a board approved, especially because that would mean we can pull together a thoughtful and get thoughtful input from a variety of county stakeholders, such as our cities, town councils, labor partners, community-based organizations, and others. Furthermore, it would enable us to embrace a more public and accountable process of collecting and gathering feedback. As I mentioned when we first discussed this issue, I remain concerned about the communities in my North County, namely the Antelope Valley and Santa Cruz Valley, that quite frankly have challenges unique to their region and who can be written off by a countywide elected executive and a majority within the 9 supervisors. I believe this is not equal representation. It is clear in the conversations that I've had regarding the proposed governance reform that the most concerning element of this proposed ordinance is the elected countywide chief executive. There is no requirement for the elected countywide executive to have the necessary skills or job qualifications to effectively allocate a highly complex and regulated municipal budget. Let's consider, for example, what could happen when the newly elected county replaces the budget team each time they take office. Will we in the public suffer the loss of critical institutional knowledge about our fiscal policies? Will that impact have a negative effect on labor negotiations that may be underway? Will staff feel empowered to provide honest forecasts of the budget, even if not politically favorable? The County Chief Executive Office, which was formerly known as the CAO, Chief Administrative Office, was envisioned to be nonpartisan and unbiased in running the daily operations of the county, and to do so in a way that reflects the needs of the local communities represented by each district. The proposed ordinance clearly gives the majority of power and discretion to an elected county executive who, without term limits, may not operate in the best interest of all the residents of the county. For this reason, I would like to propose that the elected county executive be stricken from the ordinance. I've always been open to evaluating the size of the board based on facts, which is why, again, I supported doing a study to make sure that when we did something this significant, that we did it right. So I would like to read in the following amendment. I therefore move that the Board of Supervisors instruct County Counsel to amend the ordinance and necessary documents to strike the creation of an elected CEO and the Director of Budget and Management and any associated impacts from this omission. I appreciate the efforts to make the county become more accessible and nimble, and to be more effectively serve our residents, businesses, and organizations. However, I do not believe that a politicized chief executive will be better for this county or for my constituents. Thank you for your consideration on the amendment.
Supervisor Solis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to commend you, and I want to thank also Supervisor Hahn for actually taking on, I think, a tremendous challenge that we here in the county have been faced with for many decades. And as someone who has been representing a large segment of the Latino population now for the past 9.5 years, I can't tell you how many times I've heard in discussions, when is the board going to expand? When are we going to have more adequate representation? And we've heard many of those voices in the last couple of weeks, magnified, but even more so now, because we have an opportunity to move forward with an ordinance that I believe is going to be transformational. Yes, democracy is messy. Yes, people are fearful, but we here are elected to do something that we're entrusted with, and that is to listen to our constituents. And my constituents have been contacting me and saying, thank you for taking on a bold step. Thank you for realizing that the board has to change and that the way we do business needs to be more transparent, and also needs to require that we really prioritize the voices of our various 10 million individuals that we represent. I said earlier, I represent a very large swath of Latinos. Latinos now make up close to 50% of LA County. There's only one voice here, Latina, and it's been like that since my predecessor, Gloria Molina, who also advocated expansion of the board. At that time, it was a different era. The voters didn't approve it. But I would say that now is the time. We're seeing that more people are coming forward and wanting to see change, and they want to see it reflected on this board and also in our policies. So I do believe that putting this ordinance forward is the right thing to do, and it has those safeguards and provisions. I too believe that we have to have more representation in the form of other demographic key groups that have also not had a voice at this table, and that is the AAPI community. I, in my district, represent close to 25%, and they make up different percentages across the four supervisorial districts. They have been asking for representation. Just this last week, I attended a presser with my colleagues and with many individuals representing the AAPI community, elected officials, community-based organizations, civil rights organizations that have been asking for this change. The last time that we did redistricting here, as you know, 2 years ago, the commission, the independent commission, came out and said one of their recommendations should be that we expand the board and that there be more diversity. And that diversity today may look different. We're females, but it hasn't changed that all. And I would say that it's time for that to happen. And we should take that and embrace it, because Democracy is hard, can be messy, but I think the biggest barrier that we face, personally speaking, is when there's fear. And there are a lot of people who are afraid, thinking that they're going to lose power, thinking that they're going to lose some kind of position, or that now all of a sudden things aren't the way they looked before. I have been in that situation in many, many occasions in my own political career. But guess what? You step up to the challenge. And I have to say I'm very happy with the response that our CEO gave when asked the question about cost savings. Because it's true. We have on this board been able to do many things when we faced crisis. And all I have to do is look back at COVID. When we asked our departments to pull back because we were not seeing revenue coming in, we didn't know what was coming our way, except a tsunami of magnitude. And I recall when we made tough decisions to ask our departments to pull back on at least 8% of their budgets. And we made a promise that nobody was going to be laid off. So we have been able to do acrobats, so to speak here, in many ways, change the direction, but also prioritize what our initial concerns are, and that is to be the safety net for our constituents, to make sure we do it with respect and due diligence, checks and balances, and everybody pulling together. And I'm happy that we can look at resources, as you stated, CEO, that cost savings, for example, positions that are not filled. I bet if we go through all our departments, we're going to find that. And there are some departments who will need those positions to be filled because there may be a priority or something that has to happen. Case in point, Sheriff's Department may be one example. But I know there are other departments that can do their due diligence now and start looking through their books and acquiring and looking with a keen eye where savings can be obtained. I think that's possible. I think looking at our commissions, we have far too many, over 100 commissions. Couldn't name them all. What do they do? Are they actually productive? And do we have staff there that are providing or not providing services adequately? Where can we save money? The other part I would say is that for our unions, who I know are in the House, we definitely want to hear from you. This is a work in progress. Whatever we do, this isn't going to be decided completely and cemented. We're still going to have time to go through this. This is an incremental phase, an ordinance that will take more than 6 years to complete. And if we don't agree, or the future board here doesn't agree, I'm sure they can take it right back to the voters and make those changes. Today, we have a proposal to create an ethics commission. I have no problem with that. When we were faced with the crisis on this board here because one member created a situation, what did we say? We wanted our county council to create positions and policies so that we could have those protections for all of us, for the county, for legal protections, but also for our employees and everything.
Proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so as elected officials, we have the responsibility to do the hard work. That's what people vote for us to do. And so we can summarize it at this high level, and then we have a responsibility to break it down and go deep into the details. Democracy is messy, and we have a responsibility to make it as clear and fair and honest as we can. I have to say that I have a growing concern that as we continue to debate this issue, we continue to conflate multiple issues. And I will continue to say that without study, planning, and model maps, we won't have the information we need about how to appropriately balance voting rights of communities of interest. We all know through redistricting, it gets very sticky. There have been lawsuits for decades from groups representing underrepresented groups, and we know the climate in our current country around race and class and people with difference. And given that, we have a responsibility.
Is Jeanette Ellis Royston? Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can.
Yes, good morning. My name is Jeanette Ellis Royston, and I am in support of Motion 80 to expand 5 supervisors to 9 supervisors, depending on the decision, to better serve and to better serve all of the residents of Los Angeles County, especially those residents that have been somewhat overlooked because of the capacity or lack of capacity. So I'm looking forward for Motion 80 to move forward on behalf of the Los Angeles County. I'd like to just highlight just 1 or 2 of Supervisor Mitchell's concerns. One of them is who will govern.
Thank you. Your
and
time has
how will he
expired.
govern?
Thank you very much to Madam Chair and to Supervisor Solis for bringing up the motion. My name is Christine Lee, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Asian Youth Center located in San Gabriel, where for 35 years we've been serving low-income, immigrant, and at-risk youth in the SGV as well as the Antelope Valley, covering almost half of LA County. Given the wide swath of the county that we serve, I am calling in to support item 80 to expand the Board of Supervisors and elect a county executive. And just want to recognize the supervisors, especially Supervisor Solis, for recognizing and representing our community, particularly the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, which is the largest Asian American community in the San Gabriel Valley, larger than 42 states combined. So we really appreciate the supervisor and her staff's efforts in trying to expand representation and access for historically underrepresented communities. And particularly for our youth, civic engagement and equitable access is important and can be inspiring for them to see that there is increased, more local access in terms of their representation.
Thank you. Your time.
Happen, but I sit comfortably in that seat now. I'm here to support item 80. I'm an advisor to both the Alhambra Latino Association, and the Asian Youth Center, which is an amazing CBO that actually utilizes the DPS supported programs that the county is using to reach our residents. We need more hands on deck. I support more hands on deck. 10 million, but you're not even talking about those that are living in the shadows, who are afraid to come out, but that need your services. You need to expand the board to be able to reach. I'm also chairwoman of the Department of Social Service Commission. Come visit us, come see us at a glance, how much we're not doing.
Thank you.
Unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank you. It's Eric Preven, and I just think that this is too much confusion to be pushed through so quickly. I think the number of 9 is not clear. I understand the Supreme Court has 9, but I don't see how anybody's done an analysis to establish. And I want to understand, you to understand that there are 4 district offices in the 3rd district. There are 40 employees. That's 10 per office. That's like 4 supervisors in Council District 3. The reason we have service problems is because we have service problems. How would it help with the probation department, festering mess, to have 9 supervisors? And an elected CEO is absolutely a weird conflict. I mean, I don't want me to be a troublemaker. This needs to be, rethought. We don't want to screw it up. And if it's not going to happen for another 4 years, why not get it right? We're going to try to extend. It's a noble idea. And note how a huge political action group is the one who's doing all this calling in. This is totally inappropriate in the heat of summer. I recommend that we throw this back and let's get a life, for God's sake. There's so many things we can do now without hiring an ethics
Thank you.
commission.
Your time has expired.
Great.
Next speaker, please.
Reverend Calvin Sauls, representing Sanctuary of Hope as well as a Coalition for Black Lives. I'm a black immigrant residing in Supervisor District 2. Any initiative that attempts to advance integrity and equity, transparency and accountability in county governance is welcomed. Unfortunately, item 80 is fundamentally flawed in several areas, among others. Not backed by empirical evidence, lack of democratic participation of county constituents, lack of comprehensive analysis on financial impact. Hence, I have deep concerns about item 80 in its current form and therefore do not support it. We do not seek nor expect perfection with this legislation. What we do seek is inclusion of the people residing in LA County, What we do expect is the power of participation by the people in this county. And so I am opposed to it and looking forward to ongoing work with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Pete White, Los Angeles Community Action Network. LA Can opposes the proposed expansion ballot measure, not because the Black community does not believe in and fight for representative government and agree in concept on expansion as a pathways towards direct democracy. We oppose because this proposal does not check off any of the basic boxes. Why 9 districts? How much does it cost? Why the rush to divide communities? Why an acknowledgement of the proposal being flawed but promises to fix later? 6 years to finish? Bring it back to the voters? You can't make a bad ballot initiative better. No community in Los Angeles knows better the impact of failed or deliberate policy. Racial covenants, redlining, deindustrialization, the war on drugs, homelessness, organized abandonment. In our community, we must get it right the first time because second chances are non-existent and deleterious impacts are deadly. They're not like us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
And I'm a resident of Canoga Park, and I support item 80. I am happy that the Board of Supervisors are seriously looking at increasing the number of its members. I believe that the point of doing this is to provide better representation of the constituents of LA County, and that's why that, in addition to expanding the board should also put forth a measure to do a full evaluation of the advantages of ranked choice voting to elect the additional members rather than continuing to use the 2-round contingent runoff system. This movement toward the charter amendment is a great opportunity for the Board of Supervisors to give direction to LA County Registrar Dean Logan to come back with a report on how the county could implement ranked choice voting for county elections and elections run by the county on behalf of local government. Cities and states that have already implemented ranked choice voting, such as Alaska, have found that ranked choice voting ultimately saves taxpayers a tremendous amount of money, will dramatically reduce negative campaigning during campaigns, and eliminate the spoiler effect in elections.
Thank
and it will
you.
result
Your
in
time
greater
has
voter
expired.
turnout.
Next.
Community, and I support item 80. I would like to call to your mind the disenfranchisement which occurs with ethics violations. And with limited time to speak, I just wanted to emphasize that and also commend Supervisor Hahn for making the arrangements for the Bruce family to receive their property back. That was an example of reparations. So thank you for this, and I applaud this motion and approve agenda item 80.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Jessey. Please unmute and speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Jessey, but I am a Boyle Heights-based artist. Being involved in the community has made me believe children and youth are a key to the future. And I am calling in support of item 80 and would like to urge for new resources regarding the arts and culture created in Boyle Heights for our families in our community and also upcoming artists. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next participant is Roy Humphreys. Please unmute, speak directly into your phone. You may begin.
Thank you, Roy Humphreys, Rolling Heights. Supervisor Horvath notes that this all-woman board was the only force capable of curing the moral deprivation of this body politic. How hypocritical. What happened to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Great job, Supervisor Barger. Supervisor Solis throws in the race card once again. Thank you. CEO notes the continued robbing Peter to pay Paul. Thank you for that. From the DA meeting this weekend, DA Hodgman, we need to modernize the criminal justice system, include jails with, to bring back law and order. So, show me the money. Increase the board to 19. Show me the money. Supervisor Mitchell can do the math, but our Asian brothers and sisters speaking, just brush the math aside, which is, mind-boggling thing. Now let's get on to breastfeeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.